The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to get involved in the legal fight over its use of the Alien Enemies Act to remove alleged Venezuelan gang members from the country. This comes after U.S. District Judge James Boasberg temporarily blocked the use of that act, and then a D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals panel agreed to keep his order in place. On social media yesterday, Trump went after Judge Boasberg again, writing in part, "If it was up to District Judge Boasberg and the other radical left judges, nobody would be removed. The president wouldn't be allowed to do his job, and the people's lives would be devastated all throughout our country." Trump also reposted a call from a conservative attorney to revoke Judge Boasberg's security clearance, which would have big implications. Joining us now to talk through some of those, former Assistant District Attorney in Manhattan, Catherine Christian. She's an NBC News legal analyst. So let's start there, Catherine. President Trump reposting that call to revoke the security clearance of Judge Boasberg. Can he do that? And what would the impact of that be on the judge being able to continue in his position without a clearance?
Well, federal judges are not required to have security clearances by the dint of their office. And yes, the executive has wide discretion over who gets a security clearance or not. This might just be more blather. I think the administration has talked about revoking security clearances from people who don't even have them. So it would be problematic if this judge was presiding over a case with classified information and in some way the administration swept in and said that he will not be able to review that classified information. Clearly, that would be a problem for the defendant who is on trial. But federal judges generally are not required to have security clearances.
But we've seen in the Alien Enemies Act case the way that the administration has tried to say that they can't talk about certain details of this because of national security concerns. And so getting rid of his clearance might cut to the heart of that argument. But when you look at the way that the administration, allies of Trump, and of course Capitol Hill has reacted to Boasberg and other judges halting or pausing actions from the administration, they've talked about revoking security clearances, but they've also talked about impeachment or defunding some of these various branches of the judiciary. What does that all do when it comes to the credibility of the third branch of government here?
Well, the problem is because the public is hearing this. And we're talking about, chilling the independence of the judiciary. You would hope that judges will sort of block all of that noise out and just do their job. But it's very hard. It's also, quite frankly, dangerous because most federal judges, Supreme Court justices have 24-hour security, but most federal judges do not. They just go about and do their job. So there are people who hear, these basically threats of impeachment, and they may take actions that could be dangerous to the judges. So it is very disheartening as a lawyer who appears before judges to hear, the other branch of government, the executive, attacking judges they don't like. If you don't like a decision, you appeal it. You don't publicly excoriate a judge.
And we've certainly seen that kind of violence as well against judges and their families in recent years. But you talk about the chilling effect here, Catherine, and the president has continued to go after law firms that represent clients he doesn't like. Some of those firms are Jenner and Block and Wilmer Hale, which on Friday sued to stop the president from doing that. But others have cut deals to head off his executive orders. Some in the legal profession have criticized that tactic. What are you thinking about this? What's your opinion?
Well, I'm also one who criticized the folding, basically cutting a deal, because what happens, you give $40 million of pro bono service, and Skadden Arps apparently has agreed to do $100 million. Suppose in 2 months the administration says you're not doing enough, so now you have to give an additional $40 million. Where does it end? And the lawsuits, 3 different judges have now said that these executive orders are wrong and granted temporary restraining orders. So fighting for what's right is probably the right thing to do for these law firms.
Catherine Christian, as always, making these legal theories actually digestible for our viewers. Thank you, as always.